Hello and a huge welcome back to the channel. Christmas is soon approaching, so I think that this video is going to be an interesting one. Today, we're going to bust not one, but two myths surrounding the central figure of Christmas, Jesus Christ. Before we dive into things, I'm going to ask you two true or false questions. I'll give you 5 seconds to answer the questions. Ready? So question number 1, true or false? When Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, Mary gave birth that very night. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Question number 2, Jesus was born in a barn or a stable. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I presume that most of you would have guessed for number 1, true. And also for number 2 is true. So what's the answer? Well, actually, both of them are false. And in this video, we're going to unpack to find out why they're both false. Many Christians probably believe that when Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, Mary was about to give birth. She was busting at the seams, but they couldn't find a hotel or an inn, and they had to look around. The only place they could find was a barn or a stable. But that isn't actually the case. Let's look at the text very carefully and see actually what happened. In Luke chapter 2, you're given some crucial information. Caesar Augustus had issued a decree that everybody should go back to their hometown so that a census could be taken on the population. Let's read verse 4 in Luke chapter 2. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judah, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. The text informs us that Joseph was a royal, meaning he came from the line of King David. Now, from a historical and cultural perspective, the line of King David was very highly regarded, and even people living in Bethlehem called Bethlehem the city of David, which is a little bit strange because Jerusalem was known as the city of David. So people in that town really appreciated and respected people from the line of David. And with that said, if Joseph had gone there, and even if he had no friends or family, all Joseph would have had to do was say that my name is Joseph. I am the son of Heli, the son of Mattat, the son of Levi, and maybe give him some more names and genealogy. And everybody would know that, oh, this guy is from the line of King David, and doors would have opened and he would have been welcomed in to people's houses. Such was the hospitality and the respect. Furthermore, although Mary was pregnant, she did not give birth straight away because she had some time. Verses 6 and 7 inform us. And so it was that, while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. So upon careful scrutiny of the text, we can see that yes, Mary was pregnant, but she wasn't busting at the seams. There was some time before she gave birth. Now, we're not told how long she had, but it could have been days, it could have been even weeks, it could have been even a month. We're not told, but it's clear that it wasn't an emergency. There was enough time for her and all the people, maybe the friends and family, to fully prepare for her birth. Something else we should consider is that in cultures all around the world, but especially in the Middle East, when a woman is about to give birth, special attention is given to her. For example, if she was heavily pregnant, about to give birth, people would have felt obligated to help her, give birth to the baby. But we don't see that in the text. In fact, the text tells us that when her days were accomplished, in other words, when she was eventually ready to give birth, that's when she gave birth. And take into account that the Middle East, even to today, is based on honor and shame, it would have been such a tremendous shame upon the village if they hadn't, A, helped a pregnant woman, and B, hadn't sheltered somebody from the line of King David whose wife was pregnant. it would have been an utter scandal. In the book Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes, Cultural Studies in the Gospels by Kenneth E. Bailey, it provides a lot of insights from a cultural perspective about the type of building that Mary and Joseph would have stayed in. The word translated as inn is the Greek word katalima, which actually doesn't specifically refer to a commercial inn. The Greek word pandocheon is actually the word that's specifically used for a commercial inn or a hotel, and that's the word that's used in the parable of a Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10. We read, "Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, pandocheon, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, 'Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here.'" Katalima, on the other hand, just means somewhere to stay. It's a general word for somewhere to stay. It can mean, for example, a guest room. It can mean a spare room. It could mean like an inn, but there's a specific word for the commercial inn, pandocheon. Most houses in Palestine and Israel and the surrounding region at that time were quite small. They had one main room downstairs, called a family room, and maybe upstairs on the roof, or maybe connected to the family room, was a guest room. And then at the back of the house was like an animal room. It can be translated as stable, but it's not like a barn that you'd imagine on a farm. It was just a small room where 1 or 2 or a very small number of private animals were brought in at night for warmth and for security. So if it was a 1-floor room, the guest room would be at the front. Then a slightly larger family room would be in the middle, the main living area, which would where they would cook, they would eat, and they would sleep. It was just one room where all the family members would just lie down. And then there would be some steps going down to a lowered area where the animals would be. And very often set in the floor, so there's like a height difference between the family room and this, we'll call it an animal room or stable, for lack of a better word. And often there were like mangers or food troughs cut out into the floor where the cows or the donkeys, the larger animals, will be able to stand up and eat the food from the trough. Now for small animals, maybe like sheep or goats, they would have like a wooden trough or a wooden manger, which would be, you'd take it down steps, put it on the floor in the animal room. So when Luke says there was no room in the inn, he didn't have in mind a hotel or commercial inn. Instead, he had in mind a guest room in a house. So this is what probably happened. So David had friends or family, or at least he was well known from Bethlehem. He went there. The guest room was full where the guests would have stayed. So the host family, whether friends or family, we're not told, they graciously invited them to stay with them in the family room. And then Mary gave birth to Jesus, probably in the family room, not that very night, maybe a few days or a week or so. We don't know how long passed by. And then when Mary gave birth, Jesus was probably placed either in the indentation in the family room area, or a small wooden manger or food trough was brought up where they would keep Jesus. I think most likely it was the latter, a wooden trough that was brought up and they put some bedding in it. It would have been easier for them to look after the baby, and if there's any donkeys or cattle, they wouldn't accidentally lick or try to eat the baby Jesus. Clearly, a very different picture emerges than what we see in the nativity scenes. Mary was not busting at the seams, about to drop when she arrived. There was plenty of time, well, sufficient time for her to prepare for the birth. Also, they were not abandoned by the village, which would have been a dreadful shame. No, they were brought into a house. They were surrounded by friends and probably loving family. And God looked after Jesus from his birth and through his life. And we can take comfort in that. So, to conclude, yes, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Yes, Jesus was laid in a manger. But no, Jesus was not born in the middle of the night by 2 desperate people who couldn't find a room in a hotel. Instead, they were surrounded most likely by loving family, and Jesus was brought up in a very loving and caring household. So, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, comment on the video, and remember, faith is not fairy tales and God is real.